There's a quiet struggle that most people don't talk about, not openly. It happens in your thoughts, often when you're scrolling through your phone, watching someone else's story, someone else's success. You see their highlights, the perfect timing, the open doors, the answered prayers. And in the silence of your own life, you start to wonder, what about me? You don't say it out loud, but comparison begins to creep in. Their journey seems smoother. Their growth seems faster. Their calling looks clearer. And suddenly, the path you're on feels small, delayed, questionable. You begin to doubt your own pace, your own choices, your own worth. But what if the problem isn't your journey? What if the problem is the lens you're using to judge it? God never designed your life to look like theirs. His plan for you was never meant to be a copy and paste version of someone else's. Your story was handcrafted with intention, and every step, even the ones that feel slow or hidden, is part of a divine rhythm that doesn't follow the world's timeline. The enemy loves to use comparison as a distraction, because if he can get you looking at everyone else, he can keep you from noticing what God is doing in your own life. And here's the truth. You weren't called to walk their road. You were called to walk yours, with faith, with trust, with courage. So many of us carry unnecessary pressure, thinking we're behind because we haven't hit certain milestones. But heaven doesn't measure progress the way humans do. God's not checking your timeline against anyone else's. He's not disappointed that your growth looks different. He's not frustrated by your pace. In fact, he's deeply involved in it. Your quiet season is not a waste. Your delay is not a denial. Your slower growth is not failure. It's a different path, a deeper path. A path where roots grow strong before the fruit ever shows. And maybe that's why God has you here, not because you're lacking, but because He's building something that needs time, something that comparison could never help you understand, something sacred. It's hard to trust the unseen when everything in you craves progress you can measure. We've grown up in a world that praises visible success. More followers, more impact, more fruit. These have become our metrics for meaning. So when your life doesn't reflect the same upward curve, when your story doesn't echo theirs, doubt begins to feel justified. You begin to ask, did I miss it? Did I take a wrong turn? Why is God so silent when others seem to be moving forward so loudly? But what if silence isn't abandonment? What if stillness isn't stagnation? There are places God calls you to that don't look like growth to the outside world, but are foundational to everything He plans to do through you. These are the seasons where He's not showcasing you, He's shaping you. And shaping isn't glamorous. It's hidden. It's quiet. It's often misunderstood, even by the people closest to you. You might feel like everyone else is passing you by, like their lives are unfolding with clarity while yours feels cloudy. But don't forget, what you see on the surface is only a glimpse of their journey. You don't see their wrestlings in the dark, their questions behind closed doors, their own battles with comparison. God doesn't need you to be on anyone else's timeline. He needs you to be faithful with where you are, because where you are right now is holy ground. Even if it doesn't look like it, even if you feel behind, even if you don't see fruit yet. There's something sacred about choosing to stay present in your own story, to show up with intention, to trust the process even when you can't trace the outcome. Comparison robs you of that sacred awareness. It tells you that your pace is too slow, your steps too uncertain. It makes you believe that what God is doing in you isn't enough. But God never asked you to be enough on your own. He asked you to be available, to show up, to stay surrendered. And in that posture, He works deeply, faithfully, and often quietly. The truth is, your story is unfolding exactly as it should. Not perfectly, not without pain, but with purpose. And no one else's progress can cancel the significance of what God is doing in you. No one else's calling can compete with yours, because God doesn't compete with Himself, and He's the one who wrote your path. You weren't created to perform, you were created to abide. And yet comparison turns life into a stage, not a sanctuary. It tempts you to measure your worth by what you've achieved, by how quickly you've grown, by how visible your blessings are. But God doesn't live in that system. He isn't keeping score like the world does. He's cultivating something deeper in you, something that comparison will never see, but heaven rejoices over. Think about the moments in Scripture that looked like setbacks, detours, or delays. Joseph in prison, Moses in the desert, David on the run. None of those seasons looked like progress, but each was packed with purpose. They weren't wasted years. They were sacred ones. They were God's way of forming strength, character, and dependence that would be essential for what was coming. So what makes you think your story should be different? God isn't late, He's strategic. And while others might be celebrating their public victories, you might be in a hidden place. But that doesn't make your journey any less valuable. In fact, it might mean He's trusting you with depth that few are willing to pursue. The deeper the calling, the deeper the preparation. The greater the weight, the stronger the foundation must be. Comparison distracts you from that sacred work. It pulls your eyes to the surface when God is working underground. And if you're not careful, you'll trade intimacy for image, depth for speed, obedience for applause. But you weren't made for their journey. You were made for yours. And the only thing God has ever asked is that you be faithful in it. Not flashy, not perfect, not popular, just faithful. You might be building quietly. You might be healing slowly. You might be growing without recognition. But none of that is unseen by the one who matters most. God is watching, not with disappointment, but with delight. Because He sees your surrender. He sees your yes. He sees the moments you choose to trust, even when your heart is tired. And that faith, that raw, imperfect, trembling faith, is beautiful to Him. So let go of the need to compare. Release the pressure to measure up. And remember this: God is not calling you to prove yourself. He's calling you to trust Him. The more you compare, the more you forget who you are. Comparison blurs identity. It steals your focus from the voice that calls you beloved and replaces it with 1,000 other voices asking, "Why aren't you like them?" But the truth is, God never intended for your life to be a reflection of someone else's highlight reel. He intended it to be a unique masterpiece, a story of grace and grit, struggle and surrender, written with intention by the one who knows every detail of your heart. You're not just a number on a graph. You're not defined by milestones you've reached or missed. You are not the sum of your accomplishments, your timeline, or your audience. You are God's. And He sees the steps you take in secret, the prayers you whisper when no one else hears, the obedience you choose when no one is clapping, the tears you shed when the weight of the waiting feels unbearable. None of it is lost. None of it is wasted. Your journey might not be loud. It might not be full of fireworks or fast-track success, but it's sacred because it's led by a God who is more interested in shaping your soul than showcasing your strength. So the next time you catch yourself scrolling, comparing, wondering if you're falling behind, pause, take a deep breath, and come back to the truth. There is no behind in God's kingdom. There's only timing, His timing. And it's always, always rooted in love. You are not being overlooked. You are being prepared. That shift in perspective is everything. Because when you stop trying to match someone else's rhythm, you start to find peace in your own. You stop racing. You stop performing. You start breathing again. You start walking with God, not ahead of Him, not behind Him, but with Him. And in that walk, things begin to change, not always outwardly, not always quickly, but deeply. You find joy in the present, strength in the quiet, and clarity in the waiting. You stop asking, "Why am I not there yet?" and begin trusting that where you are is exactly where you're meant to be. Because this isn't about pace, it's about presence. And when you walk in step with God, you're never lost, you're never late, you're right on time for your story, your calling, your path. So keep walking, not looking around, not measuring up, just walking with Him, for Him, in Him. Some of the greatest spiritual damage doesn't come from failure. It comes from false comparison. The lie that you're not enough unless you look like them. The pressure that says your value is determined by speed, status, or outward success. But if Jesus didn't live by those rules, why should you? Look at His life. He didn't rush. He didn't compete. He wasn't anxious about proving Himself. He was secure in His Father's timing. And that's the invitation for you, to walk in that same security, to trust that your journey doesn't need to make sense to others. It just needs to stay surrendered. Because when you truly let go of comparison, something powerful happens. You start to see clearly. You notice how far God has actually brought you. You remember the prayers He's already answered. You realize that even though the road has been slow, it's been sacred. Even though you've been hidden, you've been held. And the beauty of that realization? It grounds you. No more frantic chasing. No more asking, why is their life working out faster? You start to ask better questions. What is God doing in me right now? What am I learning in this waiting? What has He already written into my story that I've overlooked? That's where peace lives. In the pause, in the presence, in the permission to walk your own path without apology. You may not be able to control what others are doing, but you can choose how you respond. You can choose to celebrate instead of compare. You can choose to focus on fruitfulness instead of visibility. You can choose to believe that the pace God has set for you is not only right, it's intentional. He's not holding you back. He's holding you together. There's a quiet strength in that. A steady trust that refuses to be shaken by someone else's timeline. And the more you lean into it, the more you'll find yourself becoming who God actually created. Not a copy, not a version, but the real, radiant, rooted you. So stop rehearsing someone else's script. Stop wishing for someone else's ending. You are not behind. You are being built. And the author of your story doesn't rush masterpieces.